Hey there guys, Joel Hughes from Glass Mountains here, your remote WordPress experts. This is the second in a two-part series all about WordPress security. Now if you watch the first episode, we talked about in general terms what hacking is, why they target WordPress sites, and some of the basics you can put in place to help mitigate against that. In the second episode here, we just want to drill into a bit more detail. We're going to talk about some of the WordPress security plugins you can use to help protect your site even further, as well as even some more advanced techniques. So, please enjoy.
Security plugins. There's extra plugins which you can put into websites, WordPress sites, just to give you other options in terms of security. Now, I know we tend to use iThemes Security Pro, but there are lots of different versions out there. And I did come across a blog post which explained not only some of the prime candidates in terms of security plugins, but how they all have slightly different services, which we might stumble on there. And if I can dig out that link, I will drop it into the show notes later. But we tend to use the iThemes Security Pro. I think that does things off the top of my head. Is it two-factor authentication? Is that?
Yeah, that's one of the things it includes, where you get a little code sent to your phone by text or emailed to you or in an app on your phone, and you have to key that in. And that's a great example of what I said before, that, you know, your staff all need to be able to get those codes to log in. So sometimes it frustrates people and causes them to, get angry and all the rest. A nice aside, a positive outcome from a security perspective, but again, not necessarily from a ease of use perspective, is it effectively enforces everyone to have their own account, because you've got to be able to access the codes. So that's a nice spin-off. But on the whole, it's a well worth addition to WordPress. I think we've seen a number of hacks over the years, and huge majority of them, I think, we've managed to trace back to a exploited username or password. So if you can, bolster the security there by using these one-time codes that get sent to you somehow, then that would, be a great way to mitigate against attacks.
Yeah, because things like iThemes Pro, they've got lots of configuration, lots of settings in there which can deal with all manner of security issues on a WordPress site. And of course, there'll be updates to iThemes Pro as new things come out, isn't there?
Yeah, and some of the other things they include are you can lock down, you can move the WordPress admin. So people generally know that the WordPress admin lives at a /WP admin. So iThemes Security can move that, and it can move the login URL to try and just stop you, basically move the point someone's got to brute force it, because they'll just move on to the next website is the thinking there.
Yeah.
They also can lock down access to the admin, so it's not available outside office hours, for example. If that's all you need, that removes a lot of attack surface there if you can't access it today. Or
we've got that on the Glass Mountain side. And when I was in San Diego, I tried to log in to do some updates, and I was thinking, what am I doing wrong here? Because you try to log in and it just hits you with, and I suddenly realized, oh yes, we've got that turned on, which is fine. But it shows it was working, which is good.
Yeah, and if you're not a load of remote guys like we are, then you can lock it down to your office network and things as well, if that's going to work, which obviously stops people working from home effectively, but there's options in there.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we're talking about iThemes Pro, but I mean, there are other ones out there. There's WordFence. Are you familiar with that one much, Ben?
Not really. I've used it. I've got a passing familiarity with it, but just tend to stick to the one I know.
And the other one which comes up a lot is that I always struggle to pronounce it. Securi, is it Securi.net? Do you think?
That's how I'd say it.
Yeah. So this looks, and again, if I can dig out that blog post, that'll be an interesting one to put in the show notes, because it does show which plugins do which. I mean, iThemes Pro does a heck of a lot, but it doesn't do the web application firewall, which is why we use Cloudflare. Whereas I think Security, they kind of got a plugin and they do a bit of a web application firewall. So it kind of depends which elements you want. We've tended to pick and choose, so we can sort of assemble a more of a custom kind of layer. But I think if you decide on some approach, that's better than nothing there, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot of the general attacks, as I said before, they're just almost blindly stumbling around the internet, sort of managing and curating databases of vulnerable or potentially vulnerable WordPress sites. So there's systems out there that are just maintaining big databases of which versions of WordPress are installed at certain URLs. So if your version of WordPress is, you know, the 1 in 1,000 that's got an extra few steps to secure itself, there's, you know, a fighting chance that they move on to the next site. So it's not, you know, it's just about taking, as you know, a line between what's, you know, financially feasible for your business and how, you know, how mission critical all this stuff is.
No, I mean, that's a good point you make there, that they're maintaining a database of what they think WordPress levels are on certain websites, so that if they know an exploit comes out, they know where to first try, I suppose.
Yeah, so WordPress puts invisible data into your page that identifies that this server, this website, this server is running WordPress and which version it is. So one of the things that security plugins do is strip all that out just to make it harder to even identify that sort of stuff, which, you know, may well be very effective.
Yeah. So yeah, there's no point making it easy for the hackers, is it?
Yeah, indeed. Don't, you know, wave a flag saying this is what we are.
Something that came up, we'd done a proposal for a security company, and they currently got a WordPress site. They were particularly happy with it. They were interested in our take with how we secure it further. And aside from what we discussed so far, I think you mentioned about one of the concepts of publishing to flat files. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so if you've got a, you know, a WordPress site live on the web, obviously it can be exploited and so on. If you've just got flat files there, so they're running on a web server that's not allowing any code to run, so nothing to actually happen other than load the website, then that's inherently, you know, more secure, less attackable. So WordPress uses something called PHP to, you know, do its
magic.
Yeah, make things happen. If you don't need WordPress itself and can dump everything out to HTML files like a, you know, websites were in the old days, then you can turn PHP off on your server or host it on something like Amazon S3, where there's, you know, much less someone can do. So you could set WordPress up, you know, somewhere out of the way, maybe on your company's internal network, so it's not exposed to the internet. And then there are ways to publish the files out from it, you know, periodically whenever you want to release, you know, new content basically, and do it that way. So then you still get the benefits of WordPress in, you know, the admin side, the familiarity and all the rest of it, but you don't have to put a WordPress install on the web. And that can be a great option for, I don't know what that noise is, if you can hear that.
Just
smoke alarms.
extra interest background noise. Yeah. So I can see that. So the team internally, they got all the benefits of WordPress, but we've got some sort of facility to publish it out there. It's almost like going to a website, you know, on your normal web browser, and you can click that save as HTML, where it's almost like it's taking a very flat copy of it, isn't it?
It's taking a snapshot of it basically and publishing that, and it will be blinding fast as well as the other which may come up in a, you know, future podcast if we discuss WordPress performance. But you know, that's one. It's a bit more specialist. It's a bit harder to set up. It's, you know, some custom development work likely required, and some bespoke options may be needed if you've got things like commenting and contact forms you want to still work.
It doesn't play nice with, say, functionality where people are logging in and they're doing all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, so anything where the site needs to be updated, where you need to capture any data from a user, isn't going to work out of the box with a flat file website, because as we've hopefully managed to explain, the you know, the thinking, the doing bit has been turned off to make it unavailable for use by a hacker. So if you want customers to, or viewers to, comment on your blog posts, then that isn't necessarily going to work without you, you know, taking some action there to make that work. So you can use things like Disqus for the commenting perhaps instead of WordPress's solution, and that then uses Disqus's servers and things to process it all rather than you needing to provide that. or you could use a third-party contact form service, so you can use things that submit to. Do we use ActiveCampaign for contact forms sometimes?
Yeah, some people use Infusionsoft, some clients are in Infusionsoft as well, aren't they? So
Yeah, so I think things like that would still work, where the form gets sent to a third party. So there's ways and to do it. But yeah, it's definitely a sort of slightly more specialist. And
yeah. I think all the other things we've discussed to date, a lot of those are a bit more accessible to people. But I think it was nice to end off with that kind of flat file approach, just for people to know that there is a final option there. There's another option as well, isn't there?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, and again, search is another challenge with that too, isn't it? You can't take, a search query from a user and process it in real time. So you generally have to live without that. So, there's compromises. And
I think we were mulling perhaps doing this on the Glass Mountain site. And I think if we do that, maybe we'll do a show on its own, just talking about what we achieved there and some of the
pros and cons. And
yeah, that's interesting. Okay, well, look, I think we'll wrap it up there for the day. I did want to mention that I think on the 23rd of April, which is a Friday, unless I've gone mistaken, what we're going to try and do is to have a webinar talking about topics like WordPress security, but maybe have a bit of a Q&A with anybody who wants to jump on as well. So I'm going to add the link for that so people can sign up and ready.
You said the 24th.
Is it 24th, is it?
That's the Friday.
It's a good start. I'm glad you're on the call, man. Right, so let's get the date right, the 24th. We'll add that into the show notes and we'll go from there. Other topics we've got coming up. There's a few blog posts coming on about we did a website review recently talking about some of the learnings from a website. And I think in terms of what we just did here, the security one, we may well do a blog post listing this out in a bit more of a structured manner rather than our chat. So if folks can sort of keep an eye on that, that'll be great. Ben, thanks for your time. And
thank you.
I shall chat to you back on the Glass Mountain Slack shortly. But I love the way as well your family, your kids are now quiet.
Yeah, they've stopped now.
Perfect timing. Excellent. All right then, mate. Well, on that bombshell, I think we'll draw it a line there. Thank you for your help, sir.